Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet. This review covers the newly released Moebius 1972 Sport Custom Ford pickup. It's kit number 1220 in the catalog, and while it's a new release, it shares some parts from previous kits such as the 69, 70, and 71 Ford pickup models. This is designated a skill level 3, which is recommended for ages 15 and up. It requires glue and paint for assembly. It has almost 130 pieces molded in white, chrome, clear, and clear red with vinyl tires and water slide decals. The Moebius instruction sheets are very detailed with color photos, and they're well written with directions and assembly diagrams. The build-up has a complete chassis and a V8 motor, and the interior consists of separate pieces so it's easy to detail. The body cab is one part with a multiple part bed. Assembly is straightforward, and all the details are crisp with little effort and some aftermarket parts. You could easily make this a contest winner to put on display. The overall dimensions are length 8 inches, width 3.5 inches, and height 2.25 inches. Here are the decals for this kit, and as you can see, there are color combinations for 4 different backgrounds for the decals. And always remember to use the manufacturer safety and use guidelines when using any of the products mentioned here for your own protection. When it comes to decals, I prefer to use a setting solution such as Microscale Industries, but you can use any of the products available for that. We'll begin with the frame, and prior to painting, assemble the crossmember, motor mounts, and steering box to the frame. Then paint the whole unit flat black. The I-beams are semi-gloss black, and the springs are dry brushed steel color. The radius arms are then semi-gloss black, and install the I-beams and the radius arms. Then paint the tie rod aluminum and install that. The sway bar and the links are semi-gloss black and installed after that. Assemble the rear axle halves and differential cover. Paint that and the leaf springs semi-gloss black, and paint the shocks yellow or any color that you feel you'd like. Paint the exhaust pipe steel and the aluminum mufflers. The spare wheel rim is steel, and the carrier is flat black. Install the leaf springs. Add the exhaust in place, then add the axle and the shocks. Assemble the tire onto the rim and install the spare onto the carrier. The carrier is then attached to the frame. With multiple parts in this build, you'll have to begin choosing between stock and custom parts. My build uses the custom rims. I also painted the spokes on the rims gunmetal, leaving the outer rim chrome. I use a sheet of fine sandpaper and press and roll the tire tread on it to rough up the tread. It gives it a worn street look. Now insert the rim into the tire, and if you wish, there are white wall decals for the tires on the decal sheet. Paint the brakes a steel color. Now insert a brake onto each axle and add one of the tires onto each axle to follow up. Grab these parts from the kit, as you can assemble the majority of the motor prior to painting. Assemble the block halves, oil pan heads, front cover, water pump, and the intake. Then paint the block blue and the transmission aluminum and steel. The water pump is steel and the oil filter is orange. Paint the starter black with some gold and install that. The belt is rubber with black pulleys. The alternator is aluminum and installed on the belt. The fan is black and installed on the belt. And the belt is installed to the block. The carb is a copper color, and that's installed on the manifold. Then the air cleaners are black and installed on the carb. The fuel pump is aluminum and installed, and then paint the heat riser black and install that. Then add the valve covers, and the coil is black and glued in place. I used an aftermarket part to add some spark plug wires to my motor, so I first drilled out the hole on the shaft and installed it with super glue. Then I drilled out the locations for the spark plugs on the heads, and I cut a small piece of black wire for the boots and slid them onto each wire. Then I slid the wires into place with the boot at the hole to make it look correct, and superglued all the wires into place. Then add the coil to the center wire and with it cut to fit just sitting on the motor. Paint the exhaust manifold steel and install them on the left and right sides. The radiator hoses are rubber and they're installed now too. Add the horns to the radiator and paint the radiator and drive shaft flat black. The radiator cap is aluminum and the U-joints are silver. Insert the drive shaft into the differential and transmission by installing the motor into the chassis. Then add the radiator in place, lining up the radiator hoses. Here are some close-up shots of how the front end and the suspension is arranged, as well as the rear end and the exhaust pipes, so you can see how they lay in the chassis. As you can see, this kit is highly detailed, and now we have a completed rolling chassis, and so we can move on to the next stage, which is the body preparation. Wash the body parts and major panels in some mild soap detergent and warm water, then let them air dry. After they've dried, and prior to any painting, assemble the firewall and the core support into the cab. Clean up any sprue tabs, mold marks, and blemishes that are on the cab and the hood at this time. Next, gather the parts to complete the bed. It's painted with the cab for continuity of color. Clean any of the parts, sprue tabs, and blemishes just like you did on the body. Then the inner bed skirts are installed to the bed sides, and the sides are installed on the floor. The front wall is installed, and the tailgate is assembled and installed last. Wet sand the body with some fine sandpaper, and the bed as well, and completely rinse the parts and let them air dry. Once they're good and dry, use a quality primer and paint the inside and the outside of the parts fully. I used some automotive paint, and I wanted a two-tone color for this truck, so it requires masking. So I started with the lighter color first, and I used some Ford white for the first color. Then paint the main part of the body, that'll be white, and overlap onto the other area just a little bit. I used some 3M vinyl fine line tape to mask the lines first, and it's a plastic tape that gives a nice clean edge, and it's low tack so it won't pull the paint off. It's made for automotive, but it works great for Model 2. Mask the remaining area with a low tack masking tape and then scuff the area to be painted lightly with a clean so that you can use a tack rag to remove any dust. For the dark color, I used Ford's deep Wedgwood blue metallic and painted the second color onto the body. Once the paint's cured, I remove the tape. Then don't allow the tape to sit too long, just long enough for the paint to cure, and remove it safely without damaging the new color. The longer it sits on the fresh paint, the more of a chance it has to damage the paint job. Apply the side body Sport Custom decals to the side of the body. I use some bare metal foil to apply some shine to the trim on this model, but there are a number of products on the market that do the same thing. They're applied like tape, and then you just trim off the rest outside of the trim area. To get a thin, crisp look for your window glass, I would recommend you dip it in some Pledge Floor Care and then let it wick off until it dries. Then, on the front windshield and the side vent window, you add some bare metal foil and then use some white glue to attach the glass in all the places in the cab. Paint the battery black with steel posts. The jack is black and the brake booster is black with steel and gold on the master cylinder. The radiator bottle is a light gray with a black cap. Install all of those into place in the engine bay. Paint the cab interior color on the visors and add the mirror and install that into the cab. Attach the chrome trim onto the hood side pieces there, and then add the decals to the side trim. Then paint the side trim marker lights transparent yellow. Install the door handles, gas cap, wipers, and mirrors, and use a 50-50 mix of thinner and flat black called a black wash to paint the grill area to fill in the valleys of the grill with that paint. Then paint the headlight bezels black, leaving just the area behind the lenses chrome, and add the lenses and install the grill. Assemble the back wall on the interior and paint the inside flat black, and the underside body color. Paint the seat and the door panels corresponding color to match your body color. For mine, I used a blue-gray. Then paint the door trim silver. To add a nice touch, I wanted some carpeting in my car, so I got some craft flocking from the craft store and used some white glue to adhere it to the floor pan. I found some old-style Ford emblems and added them to some paper and printed them out on my inkjet printer to make some floor mats for my truck. The dash is painted to match the seat and the doors, but there's a black top on the very top of the dash. The instrument panel is flat black with the decal for the gauges installed, and the dials, trims, and knobs are painted silver. The pedals are flat black with steel levers, and the plate is flat black there. It installs under the dash with the pedals. The steering wheel is black with aluminum and interior color, and then the column is interior color and silver levers with black knobs. Then install the wheel onto the column. Insert the column into the dash and glue it into place, and then install the dash in the interior on the side slots of the interior panels. Carefully slide the interior bucket into place into the cab, and it's a really tight fit, so you won't need any glue here. The red arrows here will show you that the cab is installed in place on the chassis and glued on the inside of the tabs on the front of the cab and the back wall. Depending on the version that you chose, pick the stock or a step bumper, add the taillight bezels to the bed, add the lenses to those, and install the chrome trim plate and add the decals of your choice. Install the bumper you chose and the license tag. For strength, use some super glue to install the bed onto the chassis. Again, use some super glue to install the front bumper and add the tag that you've chosen for that. With the hood off, here is a picture of the completed engine bay. The only extra parts you'll have are some extra decals and optional bumpers and rims. Your completed model is ready to display, but Moebius is just finished with another top quality product, and this truck is just another example. The detail is crisp, assembly is simple, the build is a pleasure, and the instructions are top notch. Overall, it's a great kit. There was just one glitch. The hood on my sample was a little bit warped. I used some hot water to straighten it out, bending it back, but it still has some warp to it. You may want to take a little extra time there if you get a sample that's like that. There's a few issues that come up, but there's nothing that really affects the overall buildability of this kit. Everything was straight and true. A little extra work, you've got a contest-ready model. And I just want to say thanks to Moebius for bringing out the best.
We hope you've liked this step-by-step how to build it review, and so that you don't miss any more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And you can find us on Facebook and at our website www.rideonreplicas.com. Thanks.